out of the building? You say that emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but of course the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building?
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on the shot.
Oh my.
Something else has
You know what? We just saw a plane circling the building.
It is in the other building.
We just saw a plane circling the building a second ago on the shot right before that.
I think there may have been another impact. Can you tell? I just heard another very loud bang, and a very large plane that might have been a DC-9 or a 747 just flew past my window, and I think it may have hit the Trade Center again.
To be honest, Elliot, I didn't get the impression that it was that big a plane.
It looks big from here.
I did see a plane go by a second ago, though, and it has now impacted the building. I'm trying to see if it's the different tower.
I think it may have been. I believe the first one was World Trade Center 1, and it looks, from what I'm seeing on the television, like it may have been the second building.
This is a piece of tape, and we may actually see another plane enter the picture here in a second.
I wonder if there are air traffic control problems.
Let's go back to Jennifer Oberstein, who was talking to a second ago. Jennifer, did you see this happen?
Hello?
Did you just see this happen, Jennifer?
Matt, I've never seen any. It looks like a movie. I saw a large plane, like a jet, going immediately headed directly into the World Trade Center. It just flew into it, into the other tower, coming from south to north. I watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center. It was a jet. It was a very large plane. It was going south. It went past the Ritz-Carlton Hotel that's being built in Battery Park. It flew right past it, almost hit it, and then went in.
This is so shocking, of course, to everybody.
My director, for grabbing those clips. Very emotional and sort of electrifying to remember what happened live as these television commentators and anchors are processing what they are seeing before their very eyes. In fact, if you want to see some of those images that go with the audio, you can pick up our video streaming at afr.net. Don't forget, if you have a friend or family member that lives in a city that does not have one of our stations on a part of our network, you can always access our programming through afr.net, get both audio and video streaming. So if you can sort of handle the thought of looking at my face for a couple of hours, you can always catch us on video streaming. But we've got audio and video streaming going all the time at afr.net. We also have apps for the iPhone, the iPad, and for the Android, so you can catch us on the go. We have podcasts. We also upload the video segments to our YouTube channel and to our website after they are done. So a lot of different ways to access the content. So you might want to, we've got about 3 more of these excerpts that we're going to play coming out of the breaks that Rob has prepared to sort of give you the opportunity to remember what it was like on 9/11. Now, toward the end of the last segment, I talked about what I think our response ought to be as a nation to the threat of Islam. And let me just review with you what I think we ought to do, because we've got a severe threat here from Islam. Islam has been at war with the West since 630 A.D. In fact, I've got a piece in here. Let me see if I can grab that by Bill Federer. And he's talking here just about the history of Syria. Syria is in the news, obviously, and we're going to get to President Obama's speech on Syria last night and all that. But here's Bill Federer talking about the history of Syria. It was known in biblical times as Assyria, one of the first great empires of the world. Well, actually, that's not the story that I want to talk about first of all, because he's got a piece on Syria. Let me see if I can grab that, because I may want to refer to that. Let me see if I can find that, the stuff about Syria that you do not know. Yeah, what you didn't know about Syria. So let's just talking about Syria, first of all. You know, one of the great empires of the ancient world, the first piece of literature that we have was the Epic of Gilgamesh that was written about 2500 BC in the language of Akkadian, the Assyrian language at the time. So the Assyrian Empire, the Syrian people, that as a political entity has been around since 2500 BC. It's interesting, by the way, this is a complete side note, but according to my calculations, the flood of Noah was about this time, about 2500 BC. I think I've got specific date. Let me see if I can grab the specific date. Yeah, I've got the specific date for Noah's flood being 2586 BC. So 2586 BC is when the flood of Noah hit. And if we take the biblical count at face value, as I do, then virtually everything in the world was destroyed. That would have included any manuscripts and all of that kind of thing. So the oldest surviving piece of literature, written literature we have, goes back to about 2500 BC. So that would indicate it would be written after the flood. And it's called the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's about a flood. I mean, it's written about the flood, what we know to be the flood of Noah. So that's, again, another one of those incidental confirmations that we don't need to, we don't need to dispense with the biblical record. We can trust what's in the scriptures. It's accurate. This fits perfectly with the chronology that we find in the book of Genesis. We don't have to adjust it. We don't have to scrap it. We don't have to distort it. We don't have to make it say something other than what it says. Flood occurred around 2600 BC. Should be no surprise then that the oldest piece of written literature that we still have is dated to about 2500 BC. Everything else was wiped out when the flood hit. Now, Syria, Christianity was in Syria beginning in 33 AD. St. Thomas, St. Bartholomew, and St. Thaddeus founded the Assyrian Christian Church in 33 AD, right after the crucifixion of Christ. We know that the apostle evangelized in Syria. The word Christian was used for the very first time to describe us as followers of Christ in Antioch of Syria, which was a city that was in Syria. The word Christian, by the way, just means a little Christ. That means we are called to be imitators of Christ, each of us a little Christ. And then he talks about the contributions that Christianity made. In the 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries, Christian Assyrians began a systematic translation of Greek into religion, science, and philosophy. They translated Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They translated the work of the physician Galen. They translated it into Syriac. And then after the Muslim hordes invaded in the 7th century, they translated these works into Arabic. This is where the Muslim peoples got all of their scholarship. They didn't invent any of it. They got it in translated form into Arabic by whom? By Christians. Christians were the ones that preserved the writings of Plato. They preserved the writings of Socrates. They preserved the writings of Aristotle. They preserved the writings of Galen, the first great physician. So you want to talk about contributions that Christianity has made to Western civilization and to America. There it is. These great works of antiquity, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, preserved for us by Christians. And then these Christians passed on to Arabs the translation of these great works on religion and on theology, on science, and on philosophy. That's where they got it from. And then what Bill Federer does is a piece on Daily Caller. He goes through the history of Assyria or Syria when the Muslims began to use the point of the sword to compel people to convert. They swept through the Middle East at the point of the sword beginning in 630 AD. In 1268 AD, Sultan Mameluke conquered Antioch, Syria, and slaughtered all the Christian and Jewish men, sold the women into slavery, smashed church crosses, burned Bibles, desecrated graves, dragged every priest, deacon, and monk to the altar, and slit their throats. He destroyed the church of St. Paul and the cathedral of St. Peter. So 1268, this widespread massacre, point of the sword by the Muslim armies. So you think, well, that was kind of a one-off. Well, they did it in 630, swept through there at the point of a sword, killed everybody they could, dominated, exterminated Christianity. 1268, they do the same thing. Every time you turn around, you see these Muslim armies attacking Christians with lethal force. 1867, Mark Twain went to Syria, and he wrote this in his book, Innocents Abroad. This is 1867. We called it the mausoleum of the 5,000 Christians who were massacred in Damascus in 1861 by the Turks. They say those narrow streets ran blood for several days and that men, women, and children were butchered indiscriminately and left to rot by hundreds all through the Christian quarter. They say further, again, this is Mark Twain writing this, they say further that the stench was dreadful. All the Christians who could get away fled from the city, And the Mohammedans would not defile their hands by burying the infidel dogs, so they just let them to rot in the sun. The thirst for blood extended to the highlands of Hermon and Anti-Lebanon, and in a short time, 25,000 more Christians were massacred and their possessions laid waste. How they hate a Christian in Damascus. That's the words of Mark Twain. How they hate a Christian in Damascus, and pretty much all over the kingdom of Turkey as well. Then the same thing happened in 1908 with the Young Turk Revolution by the Ottoman Sultan Abd ul-Hamid. He was succeeded by these three pashas. They promoted the idea of Ottomanization, creating a homogeneous Turkey, one race, one language, one belief, that is one religion, and they systematically expelled or exterminated non-Muslims. And a lot of people don't know about this because it happened during World War I, but Muslims in the Turkish Empire at the time during World War I were massacring ethnic minorities. There were 1.5 million Armenian men, women, and children were killed by the Muslim armies, by the Turkish Muslim armies. This is 1915. This is not ancient history. This is just 100 years ago. 1.5 million Armenian men, women, and children killed, 750,000 Syrians, 1 million Greeks, Albanians, Serbs, and Bulgarians. Here's what Arnold Toynbee wrote. Turkish rule, we might as well say Muslim rule, is now oppressing or massacring, slaughtering or driving from their homes the Christian population of Greek or Bulgarian stock, Armenia and Cilicia and Syria, where within the last 2 years it has been destroying its Christian subjects. The young Turkish gang who gained power when they deposed Abd al-Hamid have surpassed even that monster of cruelty in their slaughter. And he says this in summary: since the invasion of Islam in 630 AD, the Assyrian Church of the East, the Syriac Orthodox Church, the Syriac Catholic Church, the Maronite Church, and the Chaldean Catholic Church have suffered 33 major genocides, one every 40 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not at war with Islam, but Islam is at war with us. Focal Point AFR Talk.